Hello and welcome to my channel. Marty Braden coming to you once again from Bountiful, Utah. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, let me quickly explain what I'm doing with this channel. Each of my videos are one part of a series of videos that I'm doing on a book I just finished and decided to publish myself that I titled An Atheist Delusion. Like I said, my book is my response to the world's most renowned evolutionary biologist and atheist, Richard Dawkins, and the arguments he puts forth in his book, The God Delusion, that says, and he says supports the idea that God does not exist. My responses to each of his arguments come from my perspective as a Latter-day Saint. Anyhow, this video you're watching now is part 39, and part 38 I discuss secularism and how it's being split into two camps, so to speak, so that the polarization for those who have eyes to see is quickly coming to a head. And as it does, all our heads are going to explode on both sides of the spectrum. So let me jump right where he left off last time. Okay. The deist God, often associated with the founding fathers, Richard says, is certainly an improvement over the monster of the Bible. Unfortunately, it is scarcely more likely that he exists or even did. In any of its forms, the God hypothesis is unnecessary. Richard continues, the God hypothesis is very close to being ruled out by the law of probability. Well, let me just take a moment. I'm going to jump to something. I wrote down a couple of thoughts just so I can stay on track here. The law of probability. This is what he's talking about. It's to he set up what's called a spectrum of probability. Probability that over here has God does not exist, and over here he has God does exist. And you right in the center is 0. So 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 being the extreme on both sides. And he says where you land on that determines whether you believe God exists or you believe that he doesn't exist, and what proofs you want to rely on and what proofs you want to rely on either side of that center of the spectrum. Where your belief cursor currently sits along this spectrum tells what percentage of faith you have in God's existence, or what percentage of feelings and intentional decision you believe about God's non-existence. In other words, where on the percentage of probability spectrum has your faith landed and in your search for truth? Where does it sit right now? And that's the whole purpose of my book, was to answer his questions by giving my responses from a Latter-day Saint point of view, and hoping that your belief cursor will move with each new evidence leg that I give of informed evidences that moves you towards, man, that makes sense. Oh, boy, that does have a sense about a God, having a God. Or no, there's no way, and here's this, and it's moving this way. So how much of it is opinion? How much of it is interpretation? How much of it is based on informed evidence? And how much is based on bias? All those things kind of interplay here. But as you go through this process of determining where on the percentage of probability you are and how you feel about each evidence, we'll move it to the right or move it to the left. So it's my hope that you have started your list of informed evidence reference legs. Listen them down, that support the existence of God in your mind. Maybe you have also set up a list of informed evidence that leans towards and supports God's non-existence. I just hope that you will keep adding to those lists as we go through my book in its entirety, so that when we're done, you'll see where your belief cursor lands. By the way, I remembered the name of the awful book I mentioned in my last video about polarization is coming to a head. Here's the title. It's Perfectly Normal. What a deceiving name. It's perfectly normal. Is that not an ideological claim right there? It's perfectly normal for it says for 10 years and up. So little 10-year-olds on up, it's perfectly normal to see all these pictures of the whole different variety of old and young and wrinkled and large and skinny naked people, and different descripts of different things that deal with humankind sexuality for that little 10-year-old to see. It is absolutely filthy. It is godless, and it is antichrist, and it is in our schools, our little elementary, junior high schools. It's perfectly normal. What spirit's behind that statement? It's perfectly normal. The bottom line for me in all of this is that depending on what we choose to believe will ultimately determine the fruit that our beliefs bear. In other words, what kind of fruit will our thoughts bear out in time, and what kind of fruit have they already, these thoughts, these beliefs already born in our lives? Let's measure the two foundations. Let's measure the two ideologies and what fruit is coming forth, and why is that fruit coming forth? I basically am saying, become a fruit inspector, and you choose what kind of fruit is delicious to you. That's an interesting thing to me. It's just been crazy to see what's happening in our culture and societies throughout the world. Okay. The last statement by Richard reveals the fact that he knows that he has not proven the hypothesis that God does not exist with any incontrovertible evidence. He has merely stated his opinions about the God hypothesis and about it being very close to being ruled out, peppering this with hyperbolic hope that it will move the needles of the so-called law of probability, one's belief cursor, to the God does not exist end of the spectrum. He says, quote, "It is better for our country and for our entire world, for that matter, that we accept the idea of God or religion as being the God hypothesis and that it's unnecessary," end quote. Again, I wholeheartedly disagree with Richard's opinion. From here, Richard spends the rest of his book trying to argue that God is unnecessary, which again is just Richard's giving his own personal opinion, and I grant him that. We all have the right to express our opinion. Stating God is unnecessary, however, doesn't make him non-existent, nor does it offer any new evidence for his non-existence. Now, that's the end of this last subtitle, next to last subtitle called, it was secularism, and then going on about the government and all that. The next one is called the poverty of agnosticism, but I wanted to just close this up before we go into the poverty of agnosticism in our next video, just to simply say, okay, up until this point, we're almost done with chapter 2 already, has there really been, quote, what you can call informed evidence that makes you feel you lean towards this or lean towards that? I believe this whole idea so far of being a fruit inspector, looking at, with curiosity, what we're seeing all around us, what secularism, which is supposedly what our country's built on, and not over here in the religious right, those two foundations of secularism and the gospel of Jesus Christ, what has been their fruit? What's the fruit? What do you, as an honest human being, fruit inspector, what are you finding? Which is delicious to you? And I'd ask you why. Well, here's the thing. I know there's some who will see this, that this is delicious. The secularism is delicious. All these things that I've talked about that give birth to the ideas of, oh goodness, well, I won't go into it. I mean, there's abortion, there's LGBTQ, there's gay marriage, there's free sex, there's so many things that comes and is born out of that ideology. And there's over here, I know it seems all restrictive, the law of chastity. The gospel of Jesus Christ produces a feeling of kindness and love towards your neighbor. This just goes on and on. Marriage between a man and a woman. Avoidance of things like pornography on this side. It's to be here, clean books, good stuff, good seeds planted in the mind so it can bear forth fruit and even have birds sit in it instead of it be a weeds that birds sit in, a bush of prickliness. I mean, there's two comparative sides that one has to really look and hold those lenses looking around at society and determine for yourself what you believe in. Certainly this side over here, the secularism, is one that does promote no God, and therefore it is all subjective. It's all whatever we want to do that feels right and that feels good and that feels freedom and that's not restrictive. It's even to the point of being angry at someone else that they don't think like you think, so you're going to go cancel them, the cancel culture. And over here, it is the live and let live, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's heating up, like I said in my last video, but I wanted to focus in on this whole idea of the spectrum of the percentage of probability of God's existence or his non-existence. It really is important because we can't come up, I've given a lot of opinions too, but I believe I've brought forth some things that you can see with your eyes and hear with your ears and watch and determine what that fruit is. And those pieces should be on your list of evidences, either way. But I am just saying that this spectrum is a great way to measure yourself. But I don't want to just focus on opinions. I want to get into some information in these next few chapters. I will, in answering Richard's specific arguments. I'll be able to answer those in a way that I believe provides you reference leg evidences that you can build a firmer and a more solid and more stable, non-wobbly stand for your table of belief to sit on. And that's what I'm talking about here. That's what I'm hoping will take place. So stay with me, continue on, and we're going to go into this next subtitle of chapter 2, which that chapter 2, like I said, is the God hypothesis. And now Richard's going to talk about the poverty of agnosticism. That's our next thing. It's got some pretty good little nuggets in there I think you'll find quite interesting. But until then, share your thoughts. Ask your questions, make a wonderful comment here or there. I love to look into it and read them, and I'll answer any questions you have. I'll make some comments back. When I have that time, I'll try to get to it as fast as I can. But until then, I wish you continued success. Goodbye.